people always assume that I'm just one thing, and I'm actually like biracial, and I'm Bayesian. I don't think a lot of people know that about me. I'm from my family. My dad's family's from Barbados, so Virgin Islands mainly. If we're thinking like identity, like what people don't know about my identity, what that essentially means is that my Black experience is very different than what people think of when they think of the African American experience. I'm an amalgam of things. I definitely think that I don't spend a lot of time in like the Africana Center or Latina Center because there is a very specific idea of what a Black person or what a Latin person is in this world. You know, people look at me and they don't really know. I think they either, know exactly what to make of me or they have no idea. And then that puts them in this awkward position of like, what are you? And I'm like, a person that's gonna punch you in the face. You either get the experience of someone coming up to you and trying to speak Spanish with you, and then you can't, speak Spanish back, and then they're like, oh, you're not even really Latin, And it's kind of interesting right now, especially given like television at this moment where, you have these shows like One Day at a Time, but it's just like, kind of about the single mother raising her two kids with her mom in LA. And then there's Jane the Virgin, which is about, Latin American family in Miami. And it's just kind of like, those are great stories that are being told right now, but no story at this moment is kind of like speaking to like my experience. But I guess the stories that I would tell would be just moments when my entire Black family is gathered around like the kitchen table. I talk about like the Black family, the Black home in those stories. That'd be nice to get at. And that's been like kind of done and told before, but it's still like, you've never had people gather around the table talking about like, Black people gather around the table talking about like the implications of artificial intelligence, which is a conversation that me and my family had over Thanksgiving, Cohesive families that aren't divorced, that stay together, that put their kids through college, that have multiple houses, that go on vacations together. You don't see that part of the Black experience. And I guess it just makes it hard for me to associate like what I should be. Because people are kind of assuming things of me and telling me that I should do certain things or be a certain way or talk a certain way. And I'm just me.
I was born in Taiwan. I was there until I was 4. And then my whole family moved to China, a city called Suzhou, which is about 2 hours outside of Shanghai. So I moved there when I was 4, and I was there until I graduated high school. So I was there for 14 and a half years with my entire family. And that's where I went to international school. So my relationship with Taiwan has been very interesting, and I've grown to connect with it more and more. And that's interesting because, some people can say, oh, that's probably because you're away in the US and you have more distance and that's why you're connecting with it more. But the thing is, I never grew up there. I never did. I grew up in China. 6th grade, that was my first time ever visiting the US. It also kind of marked a transition. Instead of spending all my recess time with my Taiwanese friends, I started spending my time with some other Taiwanese friends as well, but we'd speak English together. And for some reason that was a very sharp contrast because I never spent my free time speaking English. I grew up speaking English, but not during lunchtime, not during break time. So there was that, but there was also my 7th grade was when my language of thinking started changing. So oddly enough, that I started thinking in English. I remember it was a very difficult time. I felt a lot of anger. I felt a lot of guilt. And I felt a lot of guilt. I remember when I would wake up from a dream and I would say, why did I dream in Chinese? That was when I really delve into writing. I really delve into reading a lot. I became something that was quite different than who I was. So coming to the US, that there was definitely this realization of the difference between being Asian and being Asian American. And I remember in my freshman year, I learned the term POC, people of color, person of color. And I remember I hated it. I didn't hate the word insofar as it serves. It's a word with a purpose in the US, but I didn't feel like it was a word that could be used to describe me, because I very much associated that with, it's a term that has come out because of its necessity within the landscape and the language of how people talk about race and identity and people in the United States. I am not American. As much as I love this country and as much as I sometimes forget I'm not American, I am not American. And I didn't grow up with the same set of histories that people of color in the United States have gone through. And so I definitely remember feeling a rejection of, like, yes, I'm Asian, but I'm not a person of color, because I don't carry the same discourse about race and color and all of that as people here do. I don't carry the same politics as you do. I might look like I do, but I don't.
My mom and my dad are both immigrants from China. They came to America, like Illinois, for graduate school. And I'm always weirdly surprised to remember that they both went to very good undergraduate schools in China. Like, my dad went to apparently like the best engineering school there. So it's kind of like, I don't know how celebrities' kids feel when they realize how famous their parents are. But it's just like that same feeling of like not really feeling like you know them for all the things they've been through. Especially like as I've been going through high school, I look back and think I probably should have like thought more about what they've done to get me to where I am. I just like really appreciate everything that my family has done to get where they are. And I think I usually tie that into like the immigrant experience as a whole. The idea that children of like immigrant parents usually deal with like a lot of guilt or like bargaining in terms of how much blame they're meant to put on themselves versus their family when they know that their family has gone through so much, just because of that particular narrative. Being Asian American is an interesting experience. For one thing, it's like very comforting to have that identity or like a community to fit into, but at the same time, it's obviously so diverse that you're always like working to parse the different kinds of people that you can find within an Asian American community. I used to go to a Chinese school where we would learn Chinese, and a lot of the people there already seemed quite fluent and only needed help with reading and writing. And I was still struggling with even like acquiring the language like naturally. So even that was like a very big difference between people that I should have felt kinship with. Being Asian American is, I think, an important part of my identity, just because it's brought me like a lot of like, I guess, inherent understanding of how the world works, like racism, obviously, like, and just like dealing with stereotypes both within your community and outside of. Yeah, that's tough to deal with, but there's always that sense of pride and like determination about like fully having this identity as something that you can be proud of.
One of the points of contention with me with my identity and like how it's viewed by everyone else around me is kind of just like the fact that like whenever people see me, they're like, ah, Black woman. And so like for me, I've been like very invested in like the stereotypes of like Black women in the way that like I've tried very, very hard to like not be anywhere near the bad ones, if I'm being honest. In like the last decade, they've like all been bad. But like now some of them are changing, which is nice. Like when I was growing up or like in high school when I like got into like accessorizing and like fashion, I would like never wear like hoop earrings just because like the stereotypical Black woman wears hoop earrings. And I would like never wear like really, really bright colors just because like based on like what I saw in like the media, like any Black woman who wore black colors was also like, or not black colors, who wore like bright colors was also like really, really loud and like yelled a lot and like got angry all the time and like no one liked that. And now like I definitely do not believe in that anymore. I love hoop earrings. I think they're awesome. And I'm like, I am like a loud and like robust person in like the vocal area. But I like don't think that's a bad thing. And I also like most certainly have come to like access the more like chill part of myself, which I think has like been good for me. If I was still like always energetic all the time, I like don't think I'd be doing very well. But I've like started calming down a little more like as like a person in terms of like me just kind of like sitting in silence. So I think that's also helped me kind of like reconcile with those stereotypes and like see how like me like not like talking about them or like ignoring them is like worse than like being myself. And like if I happen to like align with that like a certain stereotype, like everything I'm doing like as like myself is like a testament to how it's like not true. I think like it's really important to know that like whether you're like 12 or like 17 or like honestly like even 3, like you were like born and like you're like on this like earth and like you're doing a lot of things and like making a lot of people smile, which is like a really, really big thing for me. Like sometimes life can be like really, really hard and it can be like really hard to like think that things are gonna turn around or get better, but they definitely can. And I like firmly believe that like everyone like in this world is like here like for a reason, even if it's like to make like someone else smile. Like that's not smaller than like being president or like becoming like the savior of like some species. Like making someone smile is like just as big of a deal. You can do it.
Listen for once. Don't hold me back. I've got something I've got to say. Show me respect, and don't you forget that I am strong on my own. This is my story. This is my life. This is who I am, and this is who I wanna be.